Figure it out.
Hello, this is Adam Koralik with Figure It Out Productions. The following video is part of our Quick Shoot series.
Hey everyone, welcome to the new episode of the Figure It Out cast. This is for January 2017. If you're a Patreon backer, you're hearing this at the beginning of the month, and if you're not, hopefully you're hearing it at the end of the month of January 2017. I'm Adam Koralik, and I am joined by my co-star, Chip Senkbeil. Chip, how are you doing?
Hey, doing great. How are you?
I'm fine, man. How was your New Year's?
Well, I basically fell asleep at like 7 o'clock and woke up at 3 a.m., so I missed it.
Oh, you partied too hard. That's the problem.
I know. It was crazy. All that sleeping.
Yeah, well, yes, it's the things that induce the sleeping, I would think. But
yeah, well, I was on a flight at like 4 a.m. or something, so that I was just up late.
From where?
From Atlanta, but it was like an early morning flight.
Oh, that's cool. I'm going to Atlanta like right after that. Like I'm going to at the time we record this, I'm going to Atlanta in 2 days. It's kind of weird how we overlapped almost.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those little magical moments. Why are you going to Atlanta?
I'm going there for the Smite High-Res convention. They're bringing it out for like media coverage. I'll be there along with one of my other members from Game Society Pimps, my other channel.
Nice.
So yeah, I'm gonna be there for like almost a week.
Okay.
It's gonna be awesome. Yeah, I was there at the same convention like 2 years ago. I did a video on it at the time. That Atlanta's fun, man. Like the food down there is unreal.
Oh yeah, the food's fantastic. I eat way too much.
Dude, I'm on like this big diet right now, so I'm like scared. Like I'm not sure I'm gonna be able to control myself.
Dude, I same thing.
The other part about it that's really dangerous is, it's a press event, so like we get put in like the media room and stuff, so like all the food's free.
Oh no.
Oh, it's like right there and it's free. Like whereas I'd have to like go out and try to find healthy food and spend money on it. It's like, dude, dangerous.
Dangerous. That's right.
Yeah. But yeah, so we're off to a new year and it's going pretty well. I'm excited about it. Hopefully it's better than 2016.
Yeah,
2016
man.
was kind of shit.
Well, real quick, do you have any New Year's resolutions?
I hate doing that because like I never really honor them. But if I have to, these are my resolutions. I'm going to do my best to keep my weight under control, which I'm already doing.
Nice.
And second, I would love to play more video games recreationally. I never really get to do that. Because every time I want to play a video game, it's always like, well, I either can't, I don't have the time, or I have to play it for certain context reasons, like I got to make a video on it and stuff like that. I never get to just sit down, relax, and play a video game for fun.
Yeah, I mean, if you need a way to kind of ease yourself into that, I've seen some YouTubers similar to you that are very busy, and they'll do occasional, you still have to make the time for it, but they'll do like mini marathons for charities or something like that. Mm-hmm. And they'll still get to play, and they'll be with friends that they know and play the game, right? So one that you can play with others, or a single player that you can just have fun passing the controller around. But that could be a way to kind of not make it where it's a very strict recording. Right?
Yeah, maybe. We kind of did that once. We actually, funny enough, we did that for the Smite High-Res people. They gave us, they were willing to let us play Smite, and they would donate a minimum of $1,000 in our name to a charity.
Nice.
And if we did better, then they would donate even more. I think the maximum they would donate was like $5,000 to a charity. Mm-hmm. We came in like 6th, so we ended up we just barely missed it. If we had done a little better, we would have donated like $3,000. So we were kind of upset with ourselves, but
gotcha.
Yeah, it's okay. So we so that's the closest I've ever done to like a charity stream, as I did that one. But even then, I was doing all the behind the scenes operations. I'm doing all the management and all that stuff. And it's like, like I'm not the one even playing.
You need to have an event where you have more than one person that knows how to do that, and you kind of take turns doing it, so it's not just one person doing all the work. Mm-hmm. Which is what am I thinking of? I'm thinking of what's that really popular? They do it once a year. It's the completionist guy. He does like a live stream once a year or something like that, but it's like a really long marathon of a JRPG.
I was unaware of that.
Yeah, so I think he did Super Mario RPG this year, and last year he did Chrono Trigger. So, but he does it with like Jesse Cox and Dodger and all those big names. And
nice.
Of course, he has a bunch of people there, and they all know how to do technical stuff, so they take turns, I guess, doing all the technical bits.
But think about what you're proposing. Like, I would have to put on a big event in order to relax. Like,
well, it sounds weird, and I'm not saying it's to be big. I mean, the charity is an example, but you could easily do something where it's just like, okay, I'm just gonna have like a Friday stream, and the quality, can be whatever. Just sit down and play a game, and just record, but not do any fancy editing. Just record and then upload.
Yeah.
Anyway.
If I was going to do it, I'd want to just do it completely offline, just not have it have anything to do with work purposes.
Oh, sure. It's just to give you an excuse to be able to do it in the first place, though.
I think we were talking about this yesterday. You had asked me, like, how much time I spent away from home this year. Mm-hmm. And I think we calculated it at around 5 months of the year I wasn't home.
Yeah.
So when you think about that, there's not a lot of time, relatively, to actually just chill and play a video game. Which I feel really bad about, because obviously I love video games and I would love to do it, but I never really have that kind of time. It sucks.
You know what's going to happen, Adam? You're going to turn into one of those casual gamers that plays for 5 minutes on their phone with one of those Puzzle Quest or whatever games they are.
No, I'll never do that, because it's digital. Happen. Fuck it. That's my armor. Like, it'll never get me.
Uh-huh. You're gonna break down one day. It's going to happen.
No, never. So I guess that kind of covers, we were going to talk about our goals for 2017, but I think we just did that. Well, I did that. What's yours, man?
Well, I guess my main, in terms of, my main serious goal is that I spent way too much money on delivery and eating out last year. So I need to essentially cut that down. It'll also be good for health-wise, because if I cook more, I'll be able to cook healthier things and avoid stuff that I'm not supposed to be eating anyway. Because I can't have dairy, I can't have cheeses, I can't have a variety of stuff. I can't have almonds, which is kind of sad. But I can have cashews. So, yeah, that's my main serious one. Non-serious, probably gaming-related one. I still want to try to finish, I've had it on the back burner, a video game that I started working on a while ago. In the same vein as Mischief Makers for the Nintendo 64. Did you ever play that game?
I know of it.
You know of it? Yeah, so that was a pretty fun one. Just kind of try to write that in the Rust programming language to kind of pick that language up. Pretty fun, but yeah, that would probably be something I want to knock out in terms of making a game.
How much money could you have? I mean, you don't tell me the exact number, but how much money could you have spent on delivery where this is like an actual problem?
33% of all my spendings were delivery.
How, dude? Like,
yeah, I know.
Like first of all, I never get delivery, like ever. Like maybe it's because of where I live. Like everything's, I can just walk to wherever I want, but that just blows my mind.
Yeah, the main problem is when I go out to walk, I feel very inclined to walk my dog because she's a very high energy, high maintenance dog. Mm-hmm. And while Austin is a dog friendly place, you still can't really go in a lot of the restaurants to order. You can just have them bring it out to you, which works if you have one more person with you, so one person watches the dog and one person goes inside. But I can't actually go to most of the restaurants that are walking distance from me to get the food. Or if I order it to be picked up, I have to go in and say, hey, I'm ready to get it picked up if they don't know I'm staying outside. So it's excuses, though, so I'll fix it, but probably just cook a lot more.
Yeah, I admit, because I've been to your place, and I know what you're talking about. There's nothing immediately walkable. It seems like you need a car.
Yeah, I mean, there's some places that are walkable. I used to walk all the time before I got my dog, but if you want to go to like some of the barbecue places we went to or some of the taco places we went to, it's a long walk.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody go to Austin. The food's ridiculous. It's awesome.
Food is fantastic.
Yeah. All right, then. So on to, I think, subjects, unless there's anything else you want to talk about regarding goals.
Nope.
All right, then. So you came up with this one, I believe. This is kind of a holdover from the previous podcast. So last time around, we talked about dead genres that we wish would make a comeback. This time, we kind of joked about doing dead genres that we're glad are dead, in regards to video games. I'll give you the first word on that.
Let's see. So I didn't really play any of these, but I'm glad they're not polluting the gaming ecosystem that's already pretty heavily saturated. Back when I guess the FMVs were starting to become popular, and they had kind of those games that were more of like a gallery of pictures, and games that were more of like it was supposed to be a story, but they just had some really bad FMVs and that kind of stuff embedded. Mm-hmm. I'm trying to think. I think like the 3DO might have had some.
You're talking about a lot of stuff on the Sega CD and the 3DO, yeah.
Yeah. I'm definitely glad those don't exist anymore because, but I guess technically, if there's anything that's kind of like those visual novel games, or kind of that style, and I wish those would go away too because I don't know. I don't really find those exciting. I'd rather just read the book or read a comic, not play a game where you're reading a book or a comic. But
that's anyway, a really good answer.
Yeah, that's the one that I'm glad's gone though, is those FMV ones.
Yeah, the thing about me is, like, I don't know if there's genres I'm, glad are dead. It's just more like genres I never really have an interest in, but, like, they didn't do anything to me. Like, those text adventure games I never really cared about. FMV games I certainly never really cared about. But stuff now that bothers me is, like, and this is going to be an unpopular answer, but things like first-person shooters. And it's not like I don't like them. I just think there's too many of them. And I'm kind of glad that at least FPSs are starting to calm down and we're seeing less and less of them now. But to say that there's any that I'm glad are actually dead is not, I don't think would be actually a fair assessment. Although there's many I'm glad are not as popular as they were at one point. And FMVs is a brilliant example of that. I'm glad that isn't dominating like every single game that comes out, because, I wasn't super around when those were around. Like, I was alive, but I wasn't actively buying many video games, and I imagine there were so many people burned by those FMV games. It must have been awful. Like, the example I gave once was the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers game for the Sega CD. Like, I loved those Power Rangers games on the Genesis and the Super Nintendo and stuff, but if I had bought a Sega CD and then bought that game thinking, oh, this is gonna be some great, like, Power Rangers game, and then it was just like this crappy FMV with, like, really mutilated footage from the show, and all you did was press left or up or down every once in a while, I would have been really pissed. So I'm glad we avoided that minefield. There's always gonna be crappy games, but, like, to say an entire genre, I don't know. I guess that is the best answer, is that I'm glad FMV games are basically done. And I've never had much interest in things like date sims, although to say those are dead would be not true.
Oh, no, they're definitely thriving. And I guess it was unfair for me to say, visual novels and date sims, that kind of stuff. I wish they'd go away. I was more just, I don't want them to pollute or saturate the gaming market so much that developers that will be making games that I'd be interested in end up making, dropping those because they find it easier to make a visual novel game that makes more money, right?
That's exactly how I feel about first-person shooters.
Yeah.
Like, I like them fine, but space them out a bit. Not every game has to be one of those. We can have, good ones, and then we can focus resources on other unique experiences. And even though, not to be hypocritical here, like, when I was a kid, and even now, one of my favorite genres is platformers, like, especially 2D platformers. But those were super fucking popular when we were kids. And they made so many of them that tons of them are shit. So,
Yep.
like, even if it is your favorite genre, there's always going to be really bad ones that you have to avoid.
Sure.
So it's never good for one genre specifically to be too popular, because it gets too many bad games of that type.
Yeah.
But then again, at least those come from a core of competence. First-person shooters fundamentally are good. Platformers are fundamentally good. FMVs are not. FMV games are not fundamentally good. You have to have a very specific taste to like that.
Yeah, I think so. At least when the whole game is basically FMVs. If they throw in an FMV or two in some games, you kind of like, okay, whatever, and you keep playing the game. But when the game was basically, here's FMV number 37, you're like, oh, good. Then it's a little ridiculous.
Yep, I agree completely.
Before we move on from this one, this actually, the whole idea of oversaturation and trying to avoid something becoming too popular, kind of made me think of the for a while games were single player or had local co-op, and then there was the whole craze of multiplayer. We need to throw a multiplayer part into like every game imaginable, even games that really there's no business having a multiplayer segment in it, right? And I think it's starting to dial back a bit, which is good. But it's like, for example, games that multiplayer might have had some controversy over. When Resident Evil 5 had multiplayer, some people thought that Resident Evil was that the first game of the main series that had multiplayer component to it?
As far as I know.
Yeah, because I know they had all the spin-offs where you had like the rail shooters that you sure multiplayer, it makes sense. But a lot of people were not really comfortable with that, although I've heard also positive aspects of it. But you have aspects like them throwing multiplayer into I'm trying to think of the series now. Dead Space, right? So the first two Dead Space had no multiplayer, and were more of a horror-centric, some action elements to it. And the third one got slammed a bit because it felt like the multiplayer aspect to the co-op aspect to the game kind of changed to be more of an action-y adventure than the horror theme that the game series was meant to be, right? Mm-hmm. So it's interesting to see them now kind of dialing back, whereas before the multiplayer was so lucrative, so attractive for gamers that, it has multiplayer, I'll buy this one. And now the companies are starting to dial back where you're actually finding a couple of games that are really good that basically just have a single-player campaign, and that's it, which was unusual for a while.
Yeah, I remember that explosion there, because there was a while there people were really pissed at like Capcom for butchering Resident Evil 6, I think especially, by turning it mostly into like this weird FPS, not an FPS exactly, but like it felt like a Call of Duty game with Resident Evil characters, and it was more focused on its multiplayer than anything else. And it was like, dude, you've completely gotten away from what made Resident Evil successful.
Yep.
So yeah, I remember all that, and a lot of like multiplayer functions were shoehorned in, usually didn't work very well. And then because they were putting resources into that, they were taking away resources from the single player campaign, and a lot of the time it was resulting in mediocre games. So I'm glad that they are dialing back on that, because I'm sure they're starting to figure out like this is supposed to be single player or this is supposed to be multiplayer.
Right.
Which that could actually be its own subject. Like when you look at games like Titanfall, that game made no effort to be a single player campaign game. It was entirely intended to be multiplayer, which is fine if that's what you want. I had no interest in it for that reason. But you wonder like how many of those are going to be successful, because a lot of those games, I mean all of them actually, end up being like coasters later. Like Titanfall is a worthless game now because it requires an online community to function, and it doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly. Yep.
Yeah, and that's what actually really bothered me about like the new Star Wars Battlefront by EA. It was like, oh, this would be great if it was a game. It's just an online, basically only thing. Though to their credit, it has survived longer, but that's probably just because of the franchise attached to it.
Yep.
Yeah. So I would love to see, I mean, this isn't exactly what we're talking about, but I would love to see a new Star Wars Battlefront that is smart and single player, and I can play offline. That's what I want.
Oh yeah, well you and I are both all about longevity in games, right? Whereas some people, they prefer, okay, what is the popular game I can join into a community right now? And that's totally a fair perspective, but that's not what you and I like, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there are people who say that once you beat the single player, there's nothing else to do, therefore it has no longevity, whereas multiplayer is a persistent thing that keeps going and going. And I see that perspective. I simply don't agree with it. Like, that's not how I feel. But I get it completely.
Yeah, I've beaten Suikoden so many times, and that's the same story each time, and I 100% complete it each time because it doesn't take that long.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. I've done that with a lot of games, and I'm never like, man, if only they could update this so I could play Super Mario World online with other people. It's like, no, fuck it. I want to play it offline. I want to play this game again. I agree completely. And it's going back to the multiplayer thing. There are some diamonds in the rough when it comes to when they allocate resources in a rush. Like the definitive one is GoldenEye for the 64. Like they only made the multiplayer in like 6 weeks because it was just a bonus thing the team wanted to put in like last minute. It was kind of ironic then because it ended up being like the game that broke out FPS multiplayer for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never played the multiplayer. Never played the multiplayer.
Me neither. I didn't care.
Yeah.
Even as a kid, I was like, let's, we could all get together. Like, want to play multiplayer? No, I like the story. I don't want to play that shit with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, the multiplayer games I'd play were, and these were examples of, games that were tailored to multiplayer. Super Smash Brothers, right? Mario Kart. I mean, sure, you can play the campaign, and I did play the campaigns. But they were definitely geared towards, bringing your friends over, local co-op at least, in the early days. And I guess now the newer ones have online multiplayer. I've never actually played those in online multiplayer, though. But, yeah. I mean, there are games that I did enjoy the multiplayer, although I definitely like local co-op when I can actually bring friends over that I know locally and say, hey, let's go play this game.
Yeah,
and
I
actually
agree.
Play it.
The last game I played all the way through on multiplayer with anybody was Dead Rising 3, and that was like 3 years ago.
Hey, that's more recent than me.
Yeah, it was on the Xbox One, and my friend and I would just... But you were basically playing single player. It's just that both of you were in the same world together, and you could choose to interact together or not. But the benefit of it was you could make progress together, and you could help each other out if things got too difficult. But like, it wasn't actually required that the other person be there. The game would continue with or without them.
It's kind of nice. That way, if your friend stops playing with you, you can actually keep going.
Exactly. So I liked that. Anyway, ready to move on?
Oh, yeah.
All right. The next subject comes from Corey Marsh. He is a Patreon backer who gets to pick a subject each month, and he's been awesome enough to keep doing that. His subject is this. With the success of Super Mario Run, which is the mobile game, not on Nintendo hardware, it's something I believe currently on iOS only, but I believe coming to Android. I'm sure you have more information. We'll talk about that in a minute. With the success of that game, can we expect more classic game companies such as Konami to jump on? Would you like to tackle this first, or you want me to?
You go first.
Okay, so essentially what he's asking is, are other companies like Capcom, Konami, etc., are they going to like make new IPs, or maybe not new IPs, but like classic IPs that everyone would know? Like, will Capcom make a Mega Man game just for mobile stuff, etc., and hope that it's successful? My guess is not really. I don't think they're going to do that, only because they kind of, especially Capcom, got burned by trying this a few years ago. People forget, only a few years ago there was this big rush to the mobile market for a lot of these companies, and they bet a lot on it, and Capcom nearly went out of business doing that because a lot of these games would just collect digital dust, and they stopped focusing on competent gameplay and just on like quirks and stuff. It's possible you could see some sort of port of Mega Man or something like that Capcom might do, or maybe Konami could take Contra and do something with it. But like, aside from that, I don't think they're going to invest too many resources into making whole new titles just because of their individual situations. Capcom's, basically pulling themselves out out of the dirt just by finally making smart decisions. I'm not sure they're going to want to risk that.
Yeah, I think it's going to be company by company basis. I think we're still in the early stages of Super Mario Run for companies to really determine if they want to try that. But also, you got to keep in mind the market on mobile, especially iOS, right? A lot of casual gamers. You're not going to have too many hardcore gamers go to mobile to play these games. So you're trying to figure out, okay, what your audience is basically these casual gamers. What kind of IPs do they actually remember? What did they grow up with before they switched to mobile, right? And the ones that they probably grew up with were Super Mario Brothers, right? Maybe some did Pokemon, hence Pokemon Go. Maybe some were into Legend of Zelda, but that was more of a hardcore gamer game as opposed to. Super Mario Brothers at the time was hardcore as well, but in terms of the audience, right? Super Mario Brothers reached out to a lot more people, to me, a lot more diverse people than maybe Legend of Zelda did at the time. So it's like certain IPs might work with the casual gamer. I think Super Mario, or just Mario, that name, is one of the most widely known, widely loved IPs out there, and for more people than just the standard hardcore gamer, right? I think maybe some people would play a Kirby game. A Kirby game might work as well. Maybe a Mega Man game, but that's a pretty tough one, because I think a lot of the people that enjoyed Mega Man went on to be the hardcore gamers. There really aren't that many IPs I can think of that would appeal to some of my friends I know that aren't gamers anymore, right? But they grew up with some stuff on the Nintendo or the Super Nintendo, or one of those systems. I don't really know anyone, because I wasn't really a big Sega person. I don't really know what kind of IPs in Sega other than Sonic.
Sonic would be the only one who would have a chance.
Right, and even then, I feel like, if you had to compete, I can get one of these two games, Mario or Sonic, I think more people would get the Mario one than they would the Sonic one.
Yeah, probably. Sonic, especially lately, he needs a break.
Yeah, Sonic is really oversaturated. His image is not looking that great. He needs some time to cool off, and then, of course, when he comes back, you need to actually make a really strong showing. But yeah, I think the problem is just the IPs that companies could bring in, right? Like what kind of IP for a casual gamer could Konami bring in, or could Capcom bring in, or any of those companies that the casual gamer would like feel a lot of nostalgia for, and that could actually fit on a mobile platform. It's kind of tough.
They have them. That's why I said Mega Man would probably be Capcom's best bet. Konami's, I'd have to say, probably the Contra characters. Because people remember, believe it or not, people casually remember the Konami code. Like that comes up in pop culture a lot. Like that was in Wreck-It Ralph. People remember that. So I could see that being possible. But Konami also the modern Konami does everything in its power to like do things wrong. So what they would probably do is, if they did anything, it would be some sort of Metal Gear Solid mobile game that looks like,
Which no one would play. That's the thing.
Yeah, I don't know. It would just be something like that, where it's not really a valid, true game or anything.
Yeah.
That'd be my guess. So, yeah, I think you made a good point where you said it's on a case-by-case basis, but when you break it down, Nintendo has the best chance of this. One, because their IPs are the most well-known in the industry, regardless if you like them or not. That's just a fact. Everyone knows them. Second, this is new territory for them. All these other IPs have been on multiple platforms for years, whereas Nintendo stuff has always sat on its own hardware. Excluding Pokemon Go, this is pretty much the first Nintendo game on not Nintendo hardware.
Or those,
at least
Mario,
in a long time.
That Mario Hotel game and those Link.
But
Legend of Zelda
Nintendo didn't
games.
make those CDI games. They just
there you go,
licensed it.
CDI.
That's a long, convoluted story, but those were allowed by Nintendo through a weird old deal they had, but they didn't actually make them. The only one I know that Nintendo made for anybody else's hardware offhand, and correct me if I'm wrong in the comments, Nintendo made a Pokemon game for the Sega Pico, but only in Japan.
Huh.
But aside from that, I don't know of any Nintendo-developed games that appeared on anybody else's hardware.
There you go.
So I think that is part of it, but it's not so much like everyone knows that. It's more like person who has cell phone says like, "Oh yeah, Mario, I liked Mario, and I remember Mario. Where else can I get Mario stuff? I don't have a Nintendo. All right, I'll just download this. It's fine."
Yep.
Like I think that's as far as the thought process goes.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah. So it's possible other companies will do it, but my guess is a lot of them were either burned by it, or they don't have the competence for it, or they understand their IPs don't have the kind of pull. I could see Konami doing some bastardized version of Metal Gear Solid, but like beyond that, nothing really comes to mind, I guess.
Okay.
So there you go. Any other thoughts on that?
No, not really.
Have you played Super Mario Run?
No, I don't have an iPhone, so.
Oh yeah, me neither. I've heard it's not bad, but that it's also got DRM problems.
Yeah, I don't know about the
Apparently-
DRM stuff. I mean, I've heard that they did a good job being able to incorporate Mario universe elements into basically what is it? It's like a runner game, right?
Yeah, I think it's based on New Super Mario World or New Super Mario U, those type of games, where it's essentially just the classic NES style of gameplay, but looking more modern.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what it looks like based on all the screenshots. So again, we haven't actually played it, so I don't know, but I know it requires a persistent online connection in order to function.
It's disappointing.
Yeah, and that's a problem for a lot of people because like people who buy the game, even if they're on their own house and their internet goes out for a second or whatever, the game stops working.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that pissed off a lot of people, but it's like, and what's funny is Nintendo at first had like a PR reason for that, but then they basically started asking Miyamoto directly, and he basically said it's just because we don't want people to steal it.
Huh.
Like he was pretty direct about it.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there you go.
There you go.
All right, then we'll move on. So first, now we have a shout out. We're gonna do a shout out to a guy named Colin. Again, he is a Patreon backer and he supports us to at the level in order to get a shout out. So Colin, you're an awesome dude. Chip, what do you have to say about Colin and how like Colin's greatness?
Well, when I woke up this morning, I was thinking, man, what can I do to start off the new year right? And I thought, oh yeah, Colin. Colin exists, therefore the new year is fantastic.
That's not where I thought you were going with that. I thought you were going to say, what can I do to make the new year? Oh, yeah, I can do Colin. I'm like, whoa, this got real.
No, even though this is market explicit, that's not the reason it's market explicit, so let's stay away from that.
Right on.
No, Colin, you're amazing, man. I know it takes a lot of money to support Adam and show your love that way, so that's awesome. Thanks for basically supporting Adam for so long.
Yeah, thank you, dude. Thank you, Colin. All right. Well, okay, so you ready? We're moving on?
Yep, let's do it.
Good? Okay. All right, now this one coming from yet another backer. This is Kyle Vaughn, who is obviously he goes back a ways, and he once again he has picked a subject for us, or well, more accurately, we just picked a subject for him on his behalf. But the subject we have on his behalf is the Nintendo Switch. Where is our excitement for this thing? Will it succeed? And what happens if it doesn't?
Okay.
You want to go here?
Sure.
All right. How excited are you for the Nintendo Switch?
Let's see. I can't say. Well, then again, to be fair, for the past couple of consoles, I've not been. Oh, I need to get this first day, right? I need to get it the day it comes out. I have to have it. There's no excitement to that extreme. I'm trying to remember the last time that a console like that might have been with the PS2 when that came out, because I know I was saving up my allowance basically for like a couple of years or something like that when I knew it was coming out. But yeah, so in terms of excitement, it's not the level where I have to get it first day. I do find interest just because I like a lot of Nintendo's titles, and I know that's where they'll go. Will be on the Nintendo Switch. But no obsession with it. Just kind of a mild interest. I want to see where it goes. I'll probably get one at some point when I have some time and want to try to play one of the Nintendo titles that's on it. Other than that, there's no negativity towards it. As long as I can play it on my TV, that's fine. I don't know how often I'll take advantage of the portability aspect of it. Like, I'm not going to take it with me to work and play it during lunch. I have other things I have to do during lunch. I'm not going to take it to a friend's place unless they happen to have a Switch base there as well. And like one of my friends has done, he's brought his whole Wii U over to my place just because he has all of the digital, the DLC basically for Super Smash Brothers on it. So unless I have to do something like that to carry it over to play the whatever modern games on it, yeah, I mean, mild interest. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I like, consoles in general. I always get kind of excited for them, though I can't remember exactly what the last one was where I was like, I need this right away. It might have been the Xbox 360, but that was, 12 years ago. So it's been a while since I felt anything like that. But every time a new console comes out, I'm always kind of like, yeah, man, like right as it's happening, I start to get more into it. When the Wii U launched, I remember I got it on launch day, but I had not intended to. I remember I was kind of like, fuck Nintendo. The Wii was awful. I don't really feel like buying its successor. But then, a bunch of people were getting it that day, and they were all like, it's pretty fun, actually, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, fuck, I'm an idiot. I'm going to go down and buy it. And I did. I walked into Target and got it right away, which was great. Then I ended up really loving that console. So with the Switch, I'm more cautiously optimistic. I want one. I want to enjoy all of the experiences on it, but since we know so little about it still, like, we don't even really know what its launch titles are going to be. And it sounds like, from an outside perspective, a lot of them are going to be titles we've seen before. Like Wii U editions on crack, like Mario Kart 8 Plus or whatever it gets called and stuff like that. So there's nothing I know of yet that's going to really be burning, me inside to make me get this thing. Yeah. But realistically, I'll probably get one right away. I'll probably pre-order it at Best Buy or something, and, I'll just make it happen.
Yeah, I've told some people at work this. I really hope when they bring over some of the Wii U games, whichever ones they bring over, to the Switch, that they will bundle in the DLC, but I don't know if Nintendo has ever done that.
Oh, they already said they are doing that with a lot of them.
Oh, all right, okay.
But I remember people being they said something about Smash Brothers not being quite as complete as people would have expected. So that one might be problematic. But apparently Mario Kart 8 is going to be pretty substantial.
Oh, that'd be good.
There was some woman who works for Nintendo who did an interview about this recently, and that was essentially what she said, was that Mario Kart 8 will be, really what you want. Super Smash Brothers will have more than the Wii U version, but probably won't have everything you expect of it.
Well, it's still better than them just releasing the same thing and you having to get all the DLC again. Right?
Exactly.
And for me, I do not like DLC, especially on games like Super Smash Brothers, where I just want to have friends come over and play it locally. So if I had this system 10 years from now and I want to play Super Smash Brothers, I want to have all the characters, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So hopefully, at least all the characters. I can live with a couple of stages being missing, but if they don't have all the characters on there, I'll be pretty bummed out. But still, including more of them on the game than what comes with the Wii U will be better, right?
It's possible, and I just pulling this out of my ass, I'm just guessing. It is possible that with the Switch re-release, they're not entitled to use licenses for characters they don't own.
That's true.
Sega had to give them permission for Sonic, and Any other? Were there other Sonic characters? I think Shadow was in there. Tails might have been. I don't remember.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I honestly don't remember. But like Konami, I think gave him Solid Snake. Although I don't remember if he's in the Wii U.
Snake's not in the Wii U one. He was in the.
Oh, see, that's exactly. They couldn't cut out a deal with Konami. Pac-Man's in there, which means you had to make a deal with Bandai Namco. And you get my point. Like, there's a bunch of characters they don't own, and it might.
Cloud's in there for some reason. It's weird.
Oh yeah. He was entered late. Bayonetta entered in there, which I believe she's property of Sega. I don't remember exactly.
I have no idea.
But or maybe it was just the people who developed it, which was, I don't remember who developed it offhand. But you get my point. Like, there's a bunch of characters they don't own, and it's possible that their deals simply don't transfer over, or they're unwilling to cut new deals, or whatever it is. So that might be it, but I'm just speculating. I don't actually know that to be true.
That'd be a better reason than just saying, we're just not going to include all the DLC on it.
I agree. So we'll see. We'll see how that plays out. But yeah, like that Super Mario game we saw looked pretty good. We saw a little bit of that. I want to play that. Was it you who was saying that it seemed a lot like Super Mario 64?
No, because I've not actually seen the Super Mario game that's coming out for the Switch.
All right, so it wasn't you. So no, there's a little clip of it in that Switch reveal trailer.
Okay.
Yeah, the people are basically playing this like new Super Mario game, and it looked pretty good. So I'm excited about that. Zelda, obviously, but like that's down the road. Like that's apparently gonna miss the launch, which is unfortunate.
Yeah, but I'd rather them do a good job than rush it for the launch.
Oh, I agree completely. It's just too bad that they couldn't sync both of those up, because Nintendo needed that. Nintendo needed Legend of Zelda to be available day one with the Switch.
Yeah, no, that's true.
That would have been really helpful for its credibility, because now what it sounds like we're going to see is a lot of people just calling it like the Wii U HD machine. Like, you know, like it just comes out and most of the games are games they had last time or had access to last time. Remasters. Yeah. In an era where everyone is sick of remasters, even though here's the great secret with remasters, you don't have to buy them. But people fucking hate them conceptually. Yeah, people hate them conceptually for some reason. I get it. There's some that are like abusive of that concept. Like, you know, but at the same time, the great secret is you don't have to support it. Vote with your wallet. If you don't like it, you don't have to get it. So the Switch, I think, is going to take a lot of its titles from the Wii U, just kind of take a lot of its, shall we say, greatest hits, like Splatoon will be in there as well, to give basically Switch players who never owned a Wii U the option of playing a lot of these games, because to them it'll be brand new. And that's fine, but you also have to have some stuff that was really only available for the Switch, stuff that's exciting about the Switch that Wii U owners had. Now, granted, Zelda looks like it's still coming to the Wii U, although we don't really know. But that would have been the title to do it. That would have been the title to have available at launch, to be like, this is why you need a Switch.
Yeah.
And the fact that they're missing that is not in their best interest.
I mean, do you think it'd be better for them to delay the Switch release then?
At this point, I don't think they can. I don't know enough about. I mean, Nintendo's incredibly secretive about how they distribute things like this. So they don't, like. Do you know that we still don't actually know what's in the Wii U? Like, they've never revealed the hardware. So like they're not good at talking about stuff like this. And so my guess is, whatever reason, they've already probably locked in a bunch of things for March of this year. So that's just what we're gonna go with. If you had known this a while back, I would have said, yeah, you should probably delay it until Zelda's ready. And maybe, you know, for all we know, that's why it's coming out in March. Because I always thought, you know, November would have made way more sense. Because that's, you know, the beginning of the holiday season there. That's when everybody opens their wallets and they want to buy new stuff.
Yep.
But waiting till March is really odd. I can't even remember the last home console that launched outside of, like, the holiday season. You know, holiday season, I think, kind of debatably starts in September and goes all the way to December. The last one I can think of, I guess, maybe the Sega Saturn, launching in like June of like 95 or whatever it was. Like, that's the last one I can remember that had a really weird launch date. So it's odd to come out in March. And part of me is thinking the reason they did that is they thought they needed that extra time for Zelda to be available, and now that still wasn't enough time. I'm guessing. Because, like, what other motivation do you have to launch it in March?
I have no idea.
You know? I don't get why they did that, other than debatably, nothing else really comes out around then. So you, in a sense, have the market to yourself. But no one's really buying stuff right then. So it's kind of odd.
Is the holiday season buying period, is that universal? Like in terms of countries?
It's very popular in obviously North America and Europe, and even in Japan to an extent. Like they celebrate Christmas, but more for like the fun of it. Like it's Santa's like a fun, quirky thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's where what I understand about Japan, at least with this, is that Christmas is like the fun holiday, like New Year's, where everybody goes out and gets drunk and just has a good time with their buddies, and then New Year's is the one where you stay home with your family, and that's important. It's like the exact opposite of how we do it, but either way, they still buy stuff.
Yep.
So I don't know. I don't know. That's a good point. I don't know if there's some holiday in Japan in March that's significant, but I don't think so.
I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
Not
it's
a
also
marketer.
weird because it's going to launch, I guess, in all regions at the same time. Like,
Is that
I'm trying to
unusual for
remember-
Nintendo?
Well, Nintendo's done that the last couple times around. It's just I remember a time when the GameCube launched. It launched in Japan like almost a year before it launched in North America. Like, what happened to that? Why would that used to be the case? I never got that.
Oh, I mean, Japan-centric, right? Weren't they Japan first?
Yeah, but still, it's just fundamentally. I mean, that could be its own subject. Why did consoles launch early in some countries and then take forever in others? But that has nothing to do with this. We'll talk about that some other time, maybe.
Sounds good.
All right, so continuing on with the Switch, though, do you think it'll succeed?
At this point, I'd say no.
Okay, why is that?
Just because the buzz I've seen around it, there's not enough of it still, right? The casual gamer friends that I know aren't really interested in it. My coworkers have mostly forgotten about it by this point. And if, like you said, some of the main titles aren't even coming out at the launch, I think by the time that those titles come out, you're going to have... when does the Scorpio come out? Does it come out this coming year?
We believe it comes out in November 2017, so yes, this year.
Right. So if that's the case, I feel like that would overshadow the Switch for core gamers, right? So I don't really know what audience is going to latch onto this one right now. But I think it's a minor failure. I don't think it's going to be like a huge flop. I just don't think it's going to be the success that Nintendo needs it to be. But I think that's also easily changeable, and I could easily be wrong on this one, right? Because we don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Just depends on what kind of buzz the initial launch gets with what games are available for it, right? And I don't know how much the user base is going to take advantage of the portability. Are they going to want it to mostly be portable? Are they going to want it to be mostly at the home? Or is it going to be a mix? I really don't know who the core audience for this system is supposed to be. Is it supposed to be core gamers or a mixture? They made it look like you were basically taking the system to your friends in different places, and that's not something I can see people doing for the most part.
Yeah. If I had to call it, I would say it's just repeating everything the Wii U did, which is unfortunately a recipe for failure. It's not doing a good job of saying what it is, really. It's not trying to hype you up all that much. It's largely banking on, we're Nintendo, it's going to be good, just trust us.
It's Nintendo, look what's happened to Sony. They did the same thing.
I know, dude. I know. It's coming out massively anemic. Like, apparently it's going to be sub Xbox One capabilities, which is, hello, that's exactly where the Wii U was. Granted, the Wii U is further behind, but it's literally the same. Like, if it's a race, like, it's still in the exact same third slot. Like, nothing's changed.
Yeah,
I know that people will counter with, like, but, hardware, the great hardware doesn't mean it has to have great games or whatever. Like, good gameplay first. It's like, I agree with that, but, like, you're cutting off what third-party developers can do with it.
Exactly.
And when you cut that off, then you cut off the amount of games available for it, and you pretty much do exactly what the Wii U did. Now, if you remember the Wii U's launch, there was actually a lot of third-party support, and a lot of it was because they were porting essentially 360 versions of games they had already made to the Wii U. It was another opportunity to get another bite of the apple, basically. But a lot of developers dropped from the Wii U really quickly. Like EA, they only released like the two sports games, like Madden 13 and like FIFA 13. And I remember, like, really within this, like, the Wii U came out at the end of November of 2012, and I think only like a week later, it was still November, and EA already said they were abandoning support for the Wii U. Like, how bad did those games sell where they knew that right then?
Yeah.
The same happened with 2K. You know, the only game they put out on the Wii U was NBA 2K13. That must have sold miserably because it was the one and only title that 2K ever put out for them. It didn't take long before pretty much everybody except Ubisoft and WB Games pretty much completely pulled shop on the Wii U. And I think the same thing's going to happen with the Switch. I think it'll come out strong. They kind of convince some third-party developers to come on board. So you might see things like Skyrim finally ported over, stuff like that. But then I don't think it's... Maybe throughout the course of the year they'll do okay because, like, we're still in the PS4 and Xbox One time frame, and the PS4 Pro isn't exactly crushing it as far as, like, pushing capabilities. Meaning there's not a whole lot of games that are being made with the PS4 Pro in mind, at least not yet. But when the Scorpio hits and everybody starts going to that next, I'm not going to call it next generation, but, like the next round of technology, the Switch will be right back where the Wii U was when the Xbox One and the PS4 launched. It's just the one in the corner that doesn't have the capability of running what everybody else is making. Yep. And that'll be problematic. And I know people will bring up, like, yeah, but, like, the Scorpio games and the PS4 Pro games, they're going to, like, run low-resolution versions and stuff. And it's like, yes, maybe, but only for at least a year or two before that's completely phased out. So, I don't know, man. I think that Nintendo probably fucked this up. If I'm being brutally honest, I think Nintendo probably fucked this up. I think it'll be a lot of fun. I think it'll be a good console, but I think it'll be pretty much the Wii U all over again.
Yeah, I think so too. It really feels like they were like, hey, we tried to market the whole portable controller for your console thing in the Wii U, and you didn't listen to us, so we just made a new console to do the same thing. And then they're not really trying to do anything different. They're just, it's pretty frustrating.
Yeah, I think they're trying to bank on the success of their portables, like 3DS and all that, and saying, like, this is essentially the new 3DS. It's just that you can also put it onto a television, so that way everybody wins. I get it. That's in concept is a fine idea, but, there's just too many other glitches in that plan. And I think those glitches are likely what is going to hold it back, because it doesn't change. The only thing that's really different about it from the Wii U from a marketing standpoint is the fact that it has more true portability. So it's possible the Switch will be successful as a portable device, but not so much as a home console.
Right.
That would be kind of interesting, actually. Like, if it actually sold like gangbusters, but then market research finds that everyone who bought it was playing it portably, and, like, the docking stations are all collecting dust.
And they get phased out later. You can buy it without the docking station.
Yeah.
And all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
That would be an interesting turn of events. That, I can't say I would necessarily predict that, but, it's a possibility, I suppose.
Yep.
So let's talk about the dark side of this. What happens if it doesn't succeed? What happens with Nintendo?
It's hard to say. They have one game, like you said. Basically, if we don't count Pokemon Go, they've had one game on mobile so far. I don't really see Nintendo just saying, oh, our console failed, so let's just make mobile-only games. But I also I can't see them immediately pulling a Sega and just starting to make all their games to other platforms either. I'm not quite sure what they'll do, but obviously their IPs of Mario and Legend of Zelda and those kind of IPs aren't going to go away overnight either. Mm-hmm. What worries me more is if Nintendo goes under in terms of the hardware. There, at least for the mobile division, I'm thinking of the mobile division with the 3DS and earlier platforms. There are some games that are still pretty unique onto those platforms. At least the RPGs I like playing, some of the turn-based strategy games I like playing. I don't really see those outside of that handheld. And I don't know where those will go if the handheld division of Nintendo also dries up, right? Because those games don't really do well on a console as much, just because they're not. I don't want to say they don't scale as well. They're not the kind of games you normally play on your television as much. It's one of those it's kind of like Advance Wars for the Game Boy Advance. It's like you wouldn't really play that on your television as much, even though I do play on my television. It was more of one of those little portable to put in your pocket, play for a little bit, save it, and be on the go. And I'm more curious as to what happens to a lot of those titles from third parties and Nintendo that are on the 3DS or their mobile division and where they will go.
Yeah, that's a valid concern. I think with regards to Nintendo, I'm pretty much on the exact same page. I don't claim they're going to go out of business. That's what when people falsely compare them to Sega, there's a huge difference. Like, Sega was pretty much going bankrupt at the time they started making the Dreamcast. I mean, they mostly made it on the back of this like really generous billionaire who was willing to just funnel cash to them himself.
I thought it was the president of their company that was basically paying.
Yeah, but he wasn't using company resources for it. He was just literally donating all of his own personal wealth.
Right, but is that the billionaire you were talking about?
Yes.
Because he basically ran out of money. He had no money left to his name, right?
No, he died.
Well, yeah, he died, but he died when he had almost no money left to his name as well, right?
I don't remember exactly, but I think he was still fine. But I mean, like, how much longer could he have really gone is highly debatable. But anyway, the point is, Sega was in really bad shape when that happened, but Nintendo is not. Nintendo is fine financially, but how many times do they have to strike out before they realize maybe people just don't want to buy Nintendo hardware anymore? And I think that might be kind of part of it. Like, that might be what happens is they might just stop making consoles and figure out what they're gonna do. Maybe they'll have their own like exclusive sort of network system that goes through other consoles, but they don't directly publish games. Like, it's Nintendo, they're gonna do something weird. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if they don't like, hey, we're gonna make Super Mario Brothers for PS4, but instead what they'll do is be like, we have the Nintendo shop on PlayStation, and you have to like log into that app, and then you use the game from inside the app or something weird, like some sort of Uplay type of thing that everyone hates. Like, I could see Nintendo doing something bizarre like that. So like, technically they'd be making the game for your PS4, or PS5 maybe at that point, who the hell knows. But like, you'd have to do this like extra step that's just Nintendo's usual extra line of bullshit. So I think honestly they don't even know. I think that's why they're testing the waters with this mobile stuff. They're testing the waters with like, is this console going to sell as a console or as a handheld? Both, neither. I think they don't really know either.
That's a problem.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's hard to say what the consequences are, but the one thing I'm sure of, unless this thing brutally tanks, like we're talking Mattel Hyperscan level sales, unless something like that happens, I don't think Nintendo is actually in any fear of going out of business. So, yeah. There you go.
Yeah, we'll see.
Any other thoughts on this?
No.
All right, then. Thank you, Kyle, for that. So what I think will be our final subject here, this was also from you, sort of. With the set, you were talking last time about the NES Classic and, like how hard it is to find one and all that. And now we're going to talk about, with the success of the NES Classic, can we expect more clone consoles? Would you like to tackle this first?
I'll let you have this one.
Okay. So yeah, the NES Classic has been really successful because it's so rare and all that stuff, because Nintendo intentionally withholds them from people, blah, blah, blah. There's like a lot of reasons why one could argue that it's successful. But basically, we're wondering if we think that other companies will follow suit. Will Sega make one of these? Will Atari make one? Blah, blah, blah. And the answer is they've already kind of done that for years. There's plenty of clone consoles on the market by, Coleco has put them out there. There's Intellivision ones. There's Genesis ones. There are like Atari 2600 ones. The difference with those is with the exception of the Atari Flashback 2, they're all made like shit. They're all made with what's called an NOAC. It literally stands for Nintendo on a chip. What happens is they make a single chip to replicate all of the functions of that particular console. But the reason it's called Nintendo on a chip, even if it's not Nintendo hardware, is that what everyone knows, all these programmers know, is they know how to work with the NES. So they basically replicate an NES, and then they build like an Atari 2600 emulator for the NES that runs on this chip. So how weird is that? As a result, that's why all these clone consoles tend to suck. Now, the Genesis one is a little different, but it's the same idea. They built essentially a Genesis on a chip, and it's never been perfected, which is why the sound is always really bad on those things. No one ever updates them. And, even some of the better-known ones, like the Retron 5, was nothing but pirated PC emulators. Like, it was wildly illegal to do that, and they did it anyway. So those things exist, but I think we might be wondering if they're going to make better quality ones. I don't think Sega personally is going to get in there and make like a high grade Genesis classic. I could see Nintendo making an SNES classic, but the other guys, I don't see anybody doing that. I mean, SNK tried this once with the Neo Geo X, which, as I think I've told you, I've said it in a video, the Neo Geo X is the only console I've ever acquired, either a console or portable ever, that I've ever acquired that I regret buying. And as I always say, the punchline to that is basically, I also own a Tiger R Zone, and I don't mind paying for it. But the Neo Geo X, I was like, fuck, I wish I could return this. Because those things suck. Like, they're cool in concept, but they suck at actually playing the games and working well, and et cetera, et cetera.
Keep in mind, folks, he has not updated his, which I have not done either, but supposedly the update you can do for it vastly improves the console, but it may still not be worth doing.
Yeah, no, I've heard that too. And if it was as simple as like just connect it to the Wi-Fi and it'll update, then I would have done it by now. But it's like the update process for that is actually kind of convoluted.
Yeah, I've not looked into it. I think it's like for mine, you just have to buy this game and it has the update on it, and you put the game in there, and it updates the system or something.
If you ever get that game, I will, next time I see you, I'll just bring my Neo Geo X and we'll just update them both.
Oh, I have the game. I've just been too lazy to open it and put it in the machine.
Why didn't you tell me? I would have brought it.
Dick. I forgot about it.
Wow. All right, then.
Yeah.
Well, then next time, remind me. I'll bring my Neo Geo X and we'll update our Neo Geo X's.
Oh, boy. This makes me think of, I think the PSP had this, right? You put in UMDs and something would have updates on the game.
That was that's true of a lot of games from like 7th gen consoles too. The 360 would have updates built into it. PS3 would have updates built into it. The Wii had updates built into the discs. That way, if you put them in a console, it would force an update. There were actually, I mean, this isn't really relevant to the subject, but there was actually Blu-rays, like a lot of Sony Pictures movies would have PS3 updates built into the Blu-ray disc.
Really?
Yeah, in the event that you put it in your PlayStation 3, it would force an update on it.
That's weird.
No, it was because Sony was trying to phase out the early firmwares of the PS3 because it was so easily cracked. So they were doing everything like they could to force you to update.
Yeah, they got sued pretty hard because of the they basically removed the Linux capabilities, right?
They did. I actually have a fat PS3 that still has that. It's never been updated, so it can actually still do that. I've never used it, but I do have it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, clone consoles. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you.
Do you think we'll see anybody trying to replicate the success of the NES Classic other than Nintendo?
I don't see... Well, I see people like Sega giving their license out more, saying, well, maybe we'll get lucky one time. But I still don't see anyone else making an official clone console similar to the NES Classic that is the same company. So Nintendo making the NES Classic. I don't see Sega making a Genesis Classic. I see them giving their license out to someone else to do it.
Which they've done a billion times, yeah.
Right. Sony, it would be interesting if they did like a PS1 Classic, but we kind of talked about this a little bit like yesterday or something, where it's too early. It's too early for the PlayStation 1.
Yeah.
So I think the hype train behind these kind of classics is going to have died off before it will get to something that Sony would produce. And I just don't see Sega doing it. And there's not really another company. Microsoft's way too far in the future to do something like this, and I don't see them doing it either.
Yeah, I don't think they care too much about their own history, to be honest.
No, and to me, the NES Classic is really only as successful as it is because of the audience again. So similar to how Super Mario Run on the iOS had a following on the casual gamers, the NES Classic is also kind of targeted towards casual gamers again. It's like, do you want to have the experience of your NES that you used to play from nostalgia and be able to plug it into your HD TV, right? Here's an NES Classic. And I don't really see that many... Like, I see the casual gamers being more Nintendo-based than any of the other companies.
Yeah.
So I just don't see there being really much of a market outside Nintendo, and I don't really see it going beyond the Super Nintendo, to be honest, if they do even make one for that. And even if they do, it probably won't be the games I like, because the games I like are the RPGs on it, which are more of the hardcore gamer ones. It'll probably be, maybe Super Mario World, or one of those will be on the Super Nintendo Classic if they make one of those, and some other games that are appealing and fun that way, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
I'm sad to say I agree.
Yeah, it is sad, and I think there's potential for hardware enthusiasts to make their own that are much better than what's coming out through these license deals.
Oh yeah.
I mean, if you take an FPGA, you can basically make like in fact, what was it? The guy, what was that system called? The Retrocon. What was that? It was that console that was that VGS or whatever it was. The one.
The Coleco Chameleon.
Yeah, that's its new name. Whatever it was called before.
It was originally called the Retro VGS.
There we go, Retro VGS. That thing, supposedly there's all this whole controversy where basically this guy wrote the hardware description language for all of these different consoles, such that it could actually run them all. But then whoever was managing that system screwed the guy over, or did something, or something like that. So basically, the point is, this one guy learned, because I think he learned it as well. He learned like Verilog or VHDL or one of those, which is the hardware description language, to make the hardware basically for those different consoles. So it's doable, and there's enough documentation for the older ones where I could see hardware enthusiasts making their own and having a little box that you can play, right? That works better than software emulators by far. And they'll probably be a much better quality, but it's going to be some enthusiast that actually does it, not the official companies.
Yeah, the closest one I can think of to what you're talking about where that actually happened was the Atari Flashback 2. The Atari Flashback 1 was made with that whole NOAC design. The guy who was designing it, he was like, they only gave him like a couple of weeks to make it, so he had to do the NOAC model. But when they wanted to make a second one with more games and stuff, he decided to do it from scratch. And he basically built an entire true Atari 2600 replica board. But the only differences he made is that it had natural composite out, which for the Atari 2600 is a huge improvement. And second, it didn't actually have a cartridge slot, but he went out of his way to make easy soldering points and even design the shell so it could be easily cut for a cartridge slot. So a lot of people do it, and then you have an Atari 2600 that's, as far as anybody knows, is a legitimate piece of hardware that actually runs composite out. So that's like the closest example I can think of, but that was like 10, 12 years ago, something like that. Like, that was a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you may see the rise of interest in doing these kind of little hobby projects from hardware enthusiasts, just because of the NES Classic taking off and bringing that kind of interest to kind of having these little built-in systems. But you're probably going to see more before any of that, just a flood of really crappy systems, whether they're licensed or not, are going to appear on eBay and other places, right? That basically are like, oh, here's 150 games in one, those kind of systems. Yeah,
I hate those things.
They're probably going to appear even more so as if the NES Classic continues to stay popular, just because there'll be some grandmother somewhere saying, oh, Billy liked this system back when he was a kid. I'll get it, and maybe his kids will like it too, or something, you know. And it's like she buys the really crappy thing that has 18 versions of Bubble Bobble or something.
You're talking about Famiclones. Those things are hilarious.
Yeah,
those things are a nightmare. They're always called like TV game system #1 and stuff.
Yeah, oh yeah,
like,
oh yeah,
terrible pieces of crap.
They're awful.
Yeah, no, I think in the short term what's going to happen is a lot of the pre-existing ones, like the Intellivision Flashback, the Coleco Flashback, all those things, will probably start being put out on the shelves more prominently to kind of trick people. But I don't know if anybody else is actually going to get in there and make like legitimate ones like Nintendo did. Like, don't get me wrong, I still have no interest in the NES Classic because it is ultimately a clone console with digital software for, you know, like, I don't care. Like, that doesn't matter to me. But I will admit it's probably, aside from the Atari Flashback 2, is debatably the most well-designed, clone console ever produced. But I still personally have no interest in it.
Yeah.
So there you go. All right, man. I think that will do it. Actually, there is one thing I want to say because we brought up Coleco. We'll probably never bring up Coleco again. So last month I did a video on the Coleco Vision, and I had talked about how like Coleco was this big company, and then at one point they died off in like, I think it was 1988, whatever. Well, at some point somebody bought the name to Coleco, so somebody actually owns what's left of their name, you know, their entity, whatever. Kind of the way somebody owns Atari, even though it's not really what it was.
Right.
So I mentioned this in a video, and somebody shared that video with what is now Coleco. And they actually sent me a message saying, like, we're not dead. We're very much alive. We have a convention. You should come to it. So there's a possibility I'll be going to this Coleco convention in like August, but I kind of doubt it because they only seemed like half serious. So we'll see.
Well, still a very interesting tidbit though.
Yeah, funny. Anyway, yes, so that'll do it. Thank you to Kyle and Corey and Colin, and of course you, Chip. Thank you very much for once again supporting this podcast, making this happen. Thank you to everybody else who supports it to happen, and thank you guys just for listening too. We really appreciate it.
Yep.
All right.
Have a happy
Anything
New
else,
Year.
Chip?
Nope.
All right. Thank you, everybody. I'll see you later.
Good. Bye.
Bye.